town property.
Right.
All right, we're ready to go live if everyone's all set.
Everyone's all set?
All set.
Well, welcome. We'd like to welcome you to the Town Finance Committee meeting. This is Tuesday, September 15th. And so I'll call the meeting to order. I don't know, Colette, if you take a roll call of those that are here or not, but.
Sure, I can take a roll call.
Sure.
Counselor Hayes,
Here.
Counselor Gleistein,
Here.
Counselor Clucci.
Here.
Thank you.
And then item number 3, I think this will probably be, this is to approve the minutes of June 19th and August 13th. It kind of goes back a ways, but I think we've kind of had some changes in schedule and other things. So with anybody, a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second. Any comments, discussion, changes, edits? Hearing none, all those in favor? And I think Colette, roll call again, probably.
Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Counselor Gleistein,
Yes.
Counselor Clucci.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
And I think this evening or this afternoon, we really have one agenda item, which is really reviewing, hopefully the final review of the TIF and the CEA policy that I think we're trying to get to the full town council. Tom, I don't know if you want to kind of take us through where we've been. I know you've done a great job of putting the documents together. There doesn't seem to be lots of changes from where we started from, but if you want to just take us through it.
Sure, I'll do my best. Liam's pulling it up. Just to kind of paint the backdrop, the last time the Finance Committee took the matter up, I believe it was at your meeting on August 13th. The draft that you worked from at that meeting was heavily influenced by comments, I believe, from Councillor Gleistein that might have been some months earlier, but at any rate, that was the majority of the changes at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done my best to capture from my notes that discussion and the proposed changes. Though I have noticed in the meantime, or since I circulated this draft, there were a couple of pieces of input that I failed to incorporate. And so let me just kind of call those out right at the beginning, and perhaps we can be mindful of them as we go through. And I believe it was Councillor Clucci talked about kind of 2 areas. One was the cost to serve analysis and how, if at all, that might be useful and worked into this policy as a decision, piece of information for the final decision, and perhaps the tax shift implications of a particular proposal, meaning what effect a TIF and a CEA would have on state subsidy and county tax implications. And I guess the final point that I don't recall coming up specifically at your last meeting, but it's come up in the context of these discussions right along, is whether or not we employ kind of an expert review to advise the council before any final decisions are made. Those 3 notions aren't specifically incorporated. So again, I want to call them out, and we can talk about them, and you can direct us as to where to work them in if you desire. So the quick backdrop to what you see before you is Councillor Gleistein's comments are shown generally in red. And then, is that right, Liam? Yes, red,
Blue.
right?
Blue.
Blue, I think.
Blue, okay, I'm sorry, blue. And then red are the changes that I captured and incorporated from your August 13th meeting. And then the highlight, which is really the last appendix, is something I'd suggest, or at least talk about whether or not we need it, just to kind of simplify the document. So with that, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, we can kind of go cover to cover if you like.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe just start on page 1. And so did we see the blue language before? Is the blue language new to this version?
And I believe you saw it. I think the colors changed since it was last
Okay.
looked at, but I believe that's language that that was in your last review on the 13th of August.
Okay. Anybody have any comments or issues on page 1?
So Tom, you'll see underlined in blue, it says is a not. It probably should just say is not. There you go.
I just had a quick thing before we go through page by page. the cost to serve analysis, the tax shifting implications, and expert review. Does anyone have, staff or members have ideas of where you think those should be?
If I recall, my comment was when we were reviewing the analysis of the affordable housing CEA for Little Dolphin, and there was a schedule that showed the cost to serve analysis that I thought was pretty good.
Yeah.
That I think I was signaling that might be worth including as an appendix or an example of what would be an acceptable or decent cost to serve. Depiction.
But so maybe Betsy, before we get to your question, I guess the first question might be, do all three of us, where do we stand in each one of these? So maybe if we just take them one at a time. I do remember the cost to serve analysis. I'd like to see that included somewhere, and maybe staff can come back to a recommendation of where it is. How does everyone else feel about the cost to serve? Is there agreement that makes some sense?
Yeah, I think that makes sense to, we know we do it, but we've done it for, everything I've been involved in. And I think you guys had done that before because Karen had, pretty extensive process for doing it. So we know that we do this, but to codify it in the policy that there will be a cost to serve analysis done prior, to the council workshop, I think just captures what we already do. I could be wrong, but that's kind of what I think.
Yeah, the only potential reference to that is I've added, it's way at the end, Liam, Appendix D. It's in the scoring criterion. I reference a positive return on investment, and to make that calculation, you need to have the expense side of things, the cost to serve. But I hear your point. We can call it out more clearly in the document itself.
So, John, I'm assuming because it was your suggestion, you're comfortable with it being incorporated somewhere, the concept of cost to serve?
Yeah, and it might just be a sample exhibit, that would be passed on probably to the finance committee when it got to that point in the process.
If I could just, we did put that under section 2 rules and conditions. We made sort of passive reference to the project is financially advantageous to the town. So we did include that language, which I think was related to the cost to serve analysis.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, but that's what that's trying to set up under 2, though, is that they have the economic projects need to satisfy at least 3 of the following. So that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be done, because if it satisfies. So maybe we go down through this. So it sounds like cost to serve analysis, at least conceptually, makes sense. I think the second one that John suggested is a tax shift disclosure, which I think is part of the financial analysis too. I think that's a great suggestion to try to codify what is that as time goes on. That could be a significant number that's worth considering. And I think that the expert review, sort of all those 3 flavors, make some sense. And so the first test would be, John and Betsy, do you agree that those are worth referencing in some fashion in this document, and we can leave it to staff to embed it where it makes sense?
Yeah, I agree that they all 3 make sense.
I do too. I think with regards to the expert review, can you elaborate a little bit on what you're looking for? Because I know that we have outside counsel help with pulling these together from the town's perspective. Are you looking for something different than that, or more involved?
Yeah, I mean, I've probably been the one that's been most vocal about it. I think it's important to have, the outside counsel we have gotten has been sort of the legal review of the terms and the documents and those types of things, which I think are important. I think, though, having some type of outside expert review of just the specific terms and the economic modeling and other things of these CEAs as going forward. So an example of the last one would have been, gee, if, you know, the terms that changed that ended up, you know, not impacting scoring, but changing dollars, you know, was an important piece. So and then certainly around the Scarborough Downs, which was a much bigger project, you know, a lot of the economic modeling, I think, you know, and maybe we make it conditional. Maybe there's some ways that maybe we don't need the expert review for every CEA. Maybe there's at the question of I'm open to how we frame that. But I think in certain cases, it would be helpful to have that on the front end before the workshops rather than at the nth hour when we're between first read and second read and trying to do it.
So maybe like tiers, like if it's a less than a $2 million CEA, maybe in-house and SEDCO can provide the analysis. If it's 2 to 5 or something, somebody else. And if it's greater than 5, maybe you want a couple extra steps. Is that kind of along the lines?
Yeah, sure. I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Tom, does that make your job impossible at this point to do that?
I'm just trying to find where to incorporate that. I heard a suggestion that it would be good to have that information prior to the workshop. So that would be somewhere before step
All in the
3.
steps, yeah.
But the way John just described, I think it probably needs to have its own presence elsewhere in the document to further refine what's needed given certain circumstances. Dollar thresholds is what he suggested.
So maybe a financial analysis section. Because there's the applicant who's going to have, you know, their story they're telling through the application they're putting in. And then there's the work that we do. And then potentially, you know, and the attorney, as well as what the tiers John just suggested. So I think it's a kind of fleshing out a little bit of the financial analysis, and maybe the tax shift could also be included in that, and the cost to serve.
Yeah, so I think where it may fit best, and Liam, sorry, I'm in section 2 at the end of it. There's a section, credit enhancement agreements.
Yep.
So we could keep going. We could add another bullet on that page there. That would be term financial analysis, and it would incorporate all 3 of those concepts. And then we could reference the word financial analysis in the steps in section 3, step 3.
Under terms, Tom?
Yeah, it might be a separate bullet all to itself called financial analysis.
I'd be fine with that approach, Tom.
Yeah. So right after level of funding adjustments, then financial analysis. Okay.
And then we can reference simply the word or phrase financial analysis in the next section, because we already have it kind of defined.
Yeah. John, does that conceptually work for you?
I think so.
Okay. Betsy, you said it did. So Tom, we can leave it in your good hands, you and Liam, to kind of, and I'm not sure we need to, when are we trying to get this on?
Yeah, our timing here was, we thought you could give a good thorough report tomorrow night during council or committee reports, and maybe foreshadow the fact that this will be coming to the council at some date. The next one would be October 7th, I believe.
Okay.
I'm not sure if we're going to have opportunity for a workshop, just because we already have one scheduled, but I can talk to Don and Paul tomorrow. I've got my standing meeting with them.
Okay.
My thought on that, Tom, it might be that the charge, the work for the rules and policies for the charter committee, I thought it went very well. It seemed like our committee was very receptive to it. The workshop may not be as long as we think on that. we might could combine the workshop to at least kind of go through a part of this or something. Just a thought.
Well, we do have both downtown and charter on for the
Oh, it's
workshop
downtown
tomorrow.
and charter. Okay, I'm sorry. I missed
Yeah.
that.
So I think we're going to need that
That's plenty,
hour.
Right. You're right. That's more than plenty.
But let's worry about getting through the document tonight, and then we can talk about, how best to bring it forward to council.
Yeah, well, what I was trying to think of, Tom, we're just thinking about whatever that was, whether if we're pretty much fine with everything that's been in front of us tonight, with the exception of what we just added,
Mhm.
whether we needed to reconvene or whether we could actually approve this document just by having it go once more through us. So I was just trying to.
Well, Peter, I don't know if it was you, Peter, but for the charter review, no, for downtown, excuse me.
Yeah.
The final go around was just an email review and a check-in. So we could try that. If you guys have heartache, then we'll schedule a meeting.
Okay, so let's keep that in mind as we go through. So I think with that, Tom, if you're ready to insert in Liam, the appropriate language where we just talked about and then get it to us, I think that works. And I think that takes care of the 3 additional items. And I'm sure all of you have probably, what do you guys think the best process? Do you guys have do you want to go through it page by page, or do you just want to single out any pages that you may have had questions or comments?
I'm okay to do the latter.
Okay. John, how about you?
I'm open, guys.
Okay. Let's maybe just go to any place. I mean, I've gone through, I think it's pretty clean. The first place I have a question is on page 2. Liam, I don't know if you can go to that, at least the draft that I have. I wasn't quite sure. Yeah, back, I think. That language right there that says the project will enhance environmental protections resulting in a more sustainable community. And then you've got the red or pink or magenta and then you've got another bullet. So I don't know if what was intended there. Is it, because the next bullet's the project is financially, just seems like it's missing a thought.
Remember, this is the one where they have to meet 3 of
No, 3
those bullets.
Yeah.
I had a question around that too. What's the measurement? Financially advantageous is a fairly subjective characterization.
Well, I guess there's 2 questions. I just didn't know what was meant by all the others don't have the or. I was just trying to understand whether there was an intent by putting or and something's missing. Or maybe.
No, I drafted that. That was just a stylistic thing. All of those are separated by semicolons, and
Okay.
I just put the or because it was the final item.
The final item. Okay, so
Yeah.
there's not something missing. It's just
No,
the structure. Okay.
just the structure.
And now you're questioning whether that the project is financially advantageous to the town. I don't know. I mean, I think that makes sense to me being there. I know it's somewhat vague. I don't know what John and Betsy think, we kind of defined further on, but I think there needs to be a financial piece in there. And again, because it's a couple out of all of the bullets, that won't be the final determinant necessarily.
Right. Well, and then we get back into the rating sheet and look at things more specifically, but you would think that maybe we would, say, does one of the criteria is if it meets with the comprehensive plan, fulfills an element of the comprehensive plan. I mean, and then environmental protections. So these get really similar to the rating sheet, and I had a couple of changes on those. So I don't know if I'd want to make those changes to both places, or, this is, I guess, just a kind of a gate to say you're even going to start the process. So this isn't really, so we haven't really spelled out here. Is this just that an applicant would say, okay, I am going to meet 3 of these, so I can go forward with the application. So it's a little confusing to me what this section is exactly. Where,
So the terminology is a little confusing to me as well, because it refers to projects, and we can use TIF funds for municipal projects that are also considered economic development projects. So that's what our 3% in the downtown TIF would go towards.
Mhm.
And is this policy expected, I guess, are those uses expected to follow this policy and application process as well? I guess it's not clear to me.
Right. Yeah, even the term TIF funding kind of threw me off, because we're trying to create a policy for when you would create a TIF incrementing financing district and apply for CEA. So I think the first section kind of throws me off a little bit based on the work we've done since the first section. Didn't throw me off originally.
I think it's really, rather than TIF funding, it's really apply for a CEA, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Right, but we have all kinds of other criteria in here. So I guess I'm just asking, is this just a gate to say, you know, they go forward with an application altogether, or anyone can do an application? I mean, do we really need this section, I guess, because we have quite a few things in beyond this where they're going to get scored, and financial analysis is going to be done.
So again, the value of this is it's a process for applicants to be able to look at before they even make contact. And so I view this as the applicant kind of self-scoring.
Yeah.
Just, it is that initial bar. Do I meet 3 of these? If I don't, I'm not even going to apply.
Right. So I'm just saying, though, I mean, it's very similar to the scoring sheet where they're going to score themselves too and give an explanation. So I just wonder if we say, do they meet 3 off the scoring sheet, or they shouldn't even apply. So we take the scoring sheet, we're going to attain or, attract or retain business, directly implement this, because that gets the comp plan, to say, do you meet at least 3 criteria on the scoring sheet? We have the financially advantageous. I know, it just seems like a little over. So let's say eligible to apply for a CEA if they meet at least 3 of the following objectives on the scoring sheet. So I don't know.
It's certainly dealing with all the same general territory. I don't disagree.
Right.
This is a fairly low bar. I would think a project of any value should be able to easily meet at least 3 of those objectives.
Right.
Yeah,
And then-
I'm okay with it. It's just, it was.
Yeah, I'm okay with it too. You might consider changing the word project to CEA or something along those lines. But honestly, most people probably won't be that deep into it. It's a decent introduction.
Well, I'm going to change TIF funding to a CEA. Just
Yeah.
go up, Liam, just to the bottom of the next page. Yeah, where it says TIF funding.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, as long as we're on this page, then I was wondering at the top if we wanted to say the purpose of the policy and the process that the town of Scarborough will use initiating or considering, or do we want to say economic development TIF and for credit enhancement within existing or new TIF districts of any type? Because I thought that we had said that this is probably not going to be an application for an affordable TIF, but we just had a CEA within an economic development TIF so that somebody could still apply for a CEA through this particular process, through any kind of TIF that we have in place. Or are we kind of saying, because it gets a little contradictory, because it says it's made on a case-by-case basis by the Scarborough Town Council and the Maine Department of Economic Community Development, which is not where an affordable housing TIF could go. So I didn't know if we wanted to call out specifically that this is for an economic development TIF.
Well, the title does, but I understand your point. The title is specific to
The title
economic
on the
development.
document itself, because the heading doesn't. Let me look at economic development. Okay, yeah, that's fine, as long as it's got that title. Okay, perfect. I'm good on that then.
So I think then on page 2, I think John has made a suggestion. I think we're generally okay with the languages there. John made a suggestion of possibly changing project to CEA. Was that your suggestion, John?
I think that the adjustment that Liam just made was fine. I think
Okay, all right. Okay. The next place I had a question was, I think on page, it's down under credit enhancement and agreement. I don't have page numbers, so it's 1, 2, 3, page 4. The red on page 4. Yep, right there. I was just wondering, this was new language we put in: to the degree the town is interested in frequent reporting from the developer, such expectations will be negotiated as part of the credit enhancement agreement. I'm just wondering if that's too restrictive. What if it's a 30-year period of time and somewhere in the middle of the period of time we decided that we needed reporting? Is there some modifier we can make to this that, you know, we can identify it in the CEA, but the town council has the ability to come back and modify the reporting requirements?
I think you negotiate that language in the CEA. The CEA will be is a legal contract. So I don't know. I don't think
Okay, so
in a policy would give you the ability unilaterally to change the terms. Like we did with the Downs, you know, we wrote right in that the first 5 years we want an annual report, and then I think it falls back to 5-year increments or some such thing.
Okay, so your suggestion is that each one would be somewhat unique, and we'd need to write in the ability to modify reporting requirements as we go along.
Yeah, and I think you'll know it. I mean, let's be realistic. You know, we're not going to have many of these, first off, and I think the council at the time will appreciate the magnitude of the financial partnership and hopefully have conversation around, we want to know about this as you know, on a regular basis. So I think that language is good. It puts everyone on alert, including us, as a reminder. These are points that we should consider when negotiating CEAs.
Okay.
Can I go back just one? Liam, yeah, right there. Councillor Gleisten, we included this language and we have this parenthetical note attributing it to you. I mean, that doesn't need to exist. I just want to check in that language is correct.
Can you scroll up a little bit, please? Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so Liam, just remove the parenthetical if you could. Okay, thank you.
And so I don't know if anybody else has any questions. I don't have any questions until the end where it's a yellow highlight, which I think is suggested to be edited or eliminated.
Right.
Does anybody else, John, Betsy, anybody else have questions in the body of the document?
Yeah, I had a few.
Okay.
I think Tom had under application fee, wanted to have an additional discussion on staff time, whether we wanted to include that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Liam, I think, can you speak to that? You added that language, didn't you?
Yeah, it was I think it was a little bit. I think the comment in the last conversation was it was a little bit clunky. So I think we tried to rework it so that it was more expansive and or summarize what those costs would be. And this may also dovetail in with the financial analysis potentially, because we sort of hold out. It was sort of with that we sort of talk about third-party costs and professional services related to, you know, process or consider an application. So from my standpoint, that could include, you know, if we're looking for a financial analysis, then perhaps some of those funds could be allocated for that purpose. I don't know how far $2,500 will go, you know, and once you start racking up those fees, but that was the purpose behind reworking it, was to try to capture some of those additional opinions.
Yeah. Betsy, you okay with the language?
I think it's good. And it, you know, it says if it's insufficient, I guess it's possible an applicant might want to have a cap, but yeah, I think all the work does have to be done. I like it. I think it's good.
John, you comfortable with it?
Yeah, I'd be fine with it. I'm fine with the $2,500 fee, but I guess if it's a big one, similar to the Downs, then yeah, it costs a heck of a lot more than that to do some of the analysis so yeah, I'm fine with it.
Right. Well, it does say that if it's insufficient, they'll assume responsibility for the third party costs at least. So not necessarily the staff time, which makes sense to me because the staff time would be difficult to quantify.
Okay. So then we go into some of the forms.
So I had one other thing. I thought,
Okay.
I thought we kind of talked about that maybe not having the state application in here, but if we're going to have the state application in here for reference, which it's not bad to have it, I would just make it Appendix A because I think Appendix A and C go together. So A is kind of the basic information, about there, and then C is the narrative for the scoring sheet. So I think it's a little confusing when you're going through it because all the questions are the same, but I think if we just put Appendix B as Appendix A and make sure we put on the actual appendix that it's the state application, or we could just have one sheet that would say, we'll at the time we'll include the state application because the state application could change too. So I'm not sure we need a copy of the state application.
I agree. I think it's confusing to this. I would suggest we drop Appendix B altogether. And so A is the application, and then B would be the narrative, applicant narrative.
Right, because they'll have a copy of the state
Yeah.
application at the time, and they can get some of the definitions to help them and all of that.
And to the extent we need their involvement in filling out the DCD application, we'll get that. But I don't think it's necessary as part of the policy. I think this is a holdover from Freeport, or one of the ones we started with, to be honest.
Right, and then I think on Appendix A, we talked just a little bit about, so this is mostly just really, it's good stuff in terms of data. So I don't think the only question I would take off of that is public benefit anticipated, because that's really what they're answering in the narrative. But the rest of it is what's the cost? What are you asking for? What's the description, the lot, who you are? That one public benefit anticipated is what they're going to answer in the narrative. Do people agree with that? Because that's not like a short one sentence answer.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then on the scoring sheet, I don't think we have to get to 100, and maybe we kind of talk about this at council a little bit, but I did want to add on the enhanced environmental protections resulting in a more sustainable community, either a separate item or add to this item, enhance or improve access to natural resources. And then I did feel like in terms of the score, attract, retain, and expand business for improving the town's economic base deserved a higher score than 5. That was number 1. I think that's a pretty high priority.
Yeah, and where you draw from is likely number 5, which I weighted the highest as a 20-point possibility.
Right. So if that one was 15, the other one could go to 10.
Correct. Yep.
And then,
And, I just picked a 100-point scale. There's nothing magical about that.
Right.
You'll notice at the end of it, we've left a blank for some discussion as to whether or not, based on this approach, whether or not you wanted to articulate a minimum score.
right. So if we didn't want to add a separate category, 11 could be worded, enhance environmental protections resulting in a more sustainable community, and enhance or improve or increase/improve access to natural resources.
Sorry, Betsy, was it environmental resources?
Yeah.
No, natural resources. So I would say increase instead of enhance, or enhance/increase, because enhance and improve would probably be the same thing, but a project that would, literally give people more access to walking trails or beaches or whatever. Okay, great, thank you. Unless committee members are not in favor of that. That was just one I had.
It's fine with me.
So Liam, then that would have to be changed on the narrative number 11 opinion.
Sure. We also have to, I apologize, I failed to incorporate 12 onto the narrative as well. So that would,
Okay. Okay, great.
we'll clean that up.
What do you think about having a minimum score?
So you mean the last note, applications that receive a composite score less than?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see any benefit to throwing that in there because you're assuming that we have perfect foresight, right? That we understand that if it doesn't get above the score, then it's not going to be worth looking at. And whoever's on the finance committee or council at the time may disagree with that assessment. There might be other variables that come into play that say, yeah, this is something we should look at as a town. So I don't think you should confuse the issue. I guess I don't see any benefit to putting a minimum score in there.
Yeah, and I think I failed, but I tried to make what started as a subjective process as objective as possible by boiling it down to a number, or numbers, I should say. I hear what you're saying. I don't disagree with your comment at all, but what if a project scores a 25 out of 100?
Could be that our scoring criteria is flawed.
Touche. Okay.
I mean, if, given that something would score a 25 and the committee still wants to put it forward, right, then that's apparently whoever's sitting at the seat at the time thinks that that's it's a problem with the scoring criteria.
Fair enough.
Which could trigger that it needs to be updated or amended or whatnot.
Okay.
I kind of thought that was there mostly for the self-scoring. If they didn't score a certain point, there was no point in bringing it further into the process.
No, my thought here was we referenced composite score, so this would have been the finance committee's score.
Yeah, it does. So
Yeah, I mean, if it's something is less than 25, I would say, council's pretty busy. I mean, it doesn't take much to get to 25, so.
But you can't stop a future finance committee from recommending that the council consider something. I guess is my point. So I don't.
Yeah, that's true. So they could look at it and say, if it's, hey, 25, we're not going to recommend it go forward.
Right. They could say, or it could be a 60 and they don't recommend it go forward.
Right. Yeah. I see what you're saying, John. Yep.
Okay. Well, we can remove that reference altogether.
It's a good thought.
Okay.
But I think the idea of a score is helpful because then, it kind of gives you a little bit of objectivity on some subjective criteria and go, wait a minute, this thing is not really meeting the criteria.
So as designed, as I proposed and you just amended a bit further, we're really prioritizing, the kind of the economic components of a proposal.
Yeah, that's heavily weighted.
Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that's bad. I was just calling it out that that's clearly the message being sent by the possible scores here.
But they do relate to economic development.
Yep.
CEAs too.
And it's possible that other counselors, might want to tweak these once it gets to council.
Yeah, I want to talk to leadership. I'd like to avoid, if possible, informal session, having 7 counselors redraft this by way of formal amendment. That will just not end well in my prediction. So if there's a way we can workshop this, I'm going to really push for that, just so we can have a more informal conversation and kind of work through these issues without the regimen of, formality.
Right. And they might, I think a tweak to a score here or there that could be fairly simple, but we'll see.
We thought that in the past.
Yeah. That's true.
And then the thought of getting rid of the Appendix E is just, everybody's okay with that?
Yes.
I was just trying to simplify things, and I wasn't seeing what value was added necessarily.
Yeah, I agree.
So I'm fine with taking that away. I have a thought, and I don't know where exactly it fits, but I'll throw it out there, especially since Ruth's here. Something that I think would be helpful when we bring this to the full council, maybe as a part of this policy or maybe as a separate document, is just a summary of what do we have out there for TIF districts today, which CEAs are in each district. And in fiscal 2020 or 19, what do we collect in taxes? What do we refund back to CEA or TIF development projects? And then what was the offset from the county tax, municipal revenue sharing, and state aid from schools or for schools? I just think having a snapshot like that and getting used to looking at it would be helpful. I'm not, maybe a one pager or something.
That's huge because, we talked about it briefly last time, and I know we don't have the same, level of economic development department as Portland, but, the documentation that Portland puts together for their TIFs and, the one pager for each one that exists is hugely helpful. And it sounded like, and I'm not remembering where I heard it now, but it sounded like, with the downtown development that there may be some additional CEAs requested. And so I think this policy is going to become really important, and a portfolio that's regularly updated of what we have in town, exactly the way that you described, John.
Well, it might set up a framework for learning too. Like we might see something that we did with one CEA and then the results and then want to replicate that or not.
Right. Yeah, I think, if we're going to be considering these, we're going to have to look at the back end of it, and that's looking at the results.
Yeah, I agree. So
And the tax shifts, the things and the ones that we change on the fly, if we ever do, et cetera, et cetera.
So Tom, I think it sounds like generally there are some minor tweaks to the document. Feels like substantively we're all in a good place with it. And it's, as we talked about at the very beginning, that, the one piece to put in is the financial piece. Everything else I think is pretty straightforward. So we'll leave it. It sounds like you're having a conversation with leadership. So whenever you think it's going to make sense to get it on the agenda, and if there's a way to do a workshop, like we probably need to formally approve a final document. I'm comfortable doing it by email with just, again, just the highlighted changes. John and Betsy, are you comfortable doing it by email, or would you like to go through it one more time?
I'm comfortable. I think
If we have a problem with what's sent out, then we can try to call a meeting. If we're all good with it, then great.
And I feel like we're being true to the public because this is the 3rd or 4th time that we've discussed it. And it is hard to put together, a complex document. So I think that we won't be saying anything that we haven't already said in public.
And the document would be on whatever agenda or workshop is called.
Right.
Sure. Yeah, so I will prime the pump with them tomorrow. This is our weekly standing meeting. And then Peter, I think it would behoove you as finance chair just to report out at the meeting for the rest of council and for the public's benefit, kind of where we are.
Yep.
I think Liam and I will probably try to turn this right around for you, just so we can kind of move it off our desks too.
Yeah.
I can't guarantee that you'll have it and be comfortable with it by tomorrow night, but I think you can say that we're getting very close and would like to schedule a workshop or find the best way to advance this to council.
Okay. Everybody comfortable with that? John, Betsy?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I think with that, the final item on our agenda was public comment. Liam, I don't know if we've got anybody in the audience that would like to weigh in on this subject?
We have no one in the audience.
I guess finance really doesn't excite them, huh? Okay, so with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Just really quickly,
Yeah.
thanks to all of you guys and to staff for working on these changes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Colette, I know you want to,
Counselor Hayes,
yes.
Counselor Glystein,
Yes.
Counselor Clucci.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Yep, see you.
Get you out.